So one of the notes here that I found interesting is basically the foundation designer noted, this is why I built it. I chose a PVR of 4. He goes, I don't have a soil report. The owner agrees that if this doesn't work, it's not my fault. And the contractor is responsible if there's a problem with the foundation. So this is where you get into conflicts where the contractor goes, I followed the engineer's plans. And the engineer goes, I told you, I don't even believe in these plans because I'm not backing them up. Now maybe the homeowner goes, whatever, that's just legal jargon and who cares? I don't mind. And they're willing to indemnify and hold harmless the builder and the engineer, and they're willing to bear the risk. But if they're not, maybe a contractor goes, okay, let's get a site-specific soil report so we understand exactly how to build this foundation and make sure it actually does hold up for a long period of time. Well, that produces 2 different budget numbers. Some contractors may not even notice this note, and they may be in trouble later if the foundation has problems. But all that comes back to affecting the homeowner at the end of the day. The homeowner is the one who's ultimately going to have to deal with these issues, whether that be good or bad. Likely bad in this case. This was another interesting. They had a note, all dimensions should be read or calculated and never. It doesn't go on to say what and never is. My guess would be and never is using the scale. A lot of times they don't like scale. They want you to use the dimensions. So that would be my guess. But again, it would be a conversation you should have with the architect because it's missing in his notes. And you really probably don't want 3 different contractors calling your architect going, what do you mean about this note? What do you mean about this note? What do you mean about this note? And the homeowner probably didn't even notice this note. They look at the plans and they probably go, this is complicated. This is why I'm hiring a contractor.